Hello and welcome to our virtual webinar, Blossom Your Mental Health. Thank you for taking time out of your day and being here with us today, even if it's only virtual. My name is Darlene and I'll be your host today. I'm an Education Outreach Coordinator here at Inland Caregiver Resource Center. I've worked in senior health care for 33 years and have written 3 books, and I'm so happy to be working at Inland Caregiver Resource Center for the past year and a half. I served on the board of directors for ICRC in 2004 and then have collaborated with this organization since then. And I have worked in adult daycare, assisted living, Alzheimer's assisted living, skilled nursing, and continuing care retirement communities. For 10 years, I had my own consulting business helping families find the right care. And I've always enjoyed working with caregivers. And I'm so happy to be your host today. We have an hour and a half of great content at our event today. So make yourself comfortable, make sure you get a snack and water or any other things that you might need. There are some snacks included in the self-care box that you may have already received in the mail. If you did not receive your box, you'll see there, if you did receive your box, you'll see there's a couple items in there for you to use today as we go through the webinar. If you did not receive it in time or receive a self-care box yet, give our office a call on Monday, June 7th between 9 and 5, and we can make sure that we get that out to you. Our number is 800-675-6694, and it's on the screen below. Before we jump right into our first presenter, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge our funders. Webinars like this and other programs are possible thanks to San Bernardino County Department of Aging and Adult Services, the Riverside County Office on Aging Family Caregiver Support Program, through grant awards from the California Department of Aging, as well as a grant from the California Department of Health Services for Caregiving Resource Centers programs. As always, we ask that you continue to support ICRC or the Caregiver Resource Center that serves your county by being active and collaborating with us in our legislative efforts to increase funding for family caregivers and seniors. In your self-care box, there is a handout for ways in which you can support ICRC. For more information, visit inlandcaregivers.org, and if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to call our office, 800-675-6694. Let's get started. Our first presenter is Dr. Paul McMahon. I first met Dr. McMahon over 20 years ago when we were both working at different Redlands companies that addressed senior mental health and Alzheimer's. He was the senior psychologist at Loma Linda Medical Center and me at an Alzheimer's assisted living. And our paths have run parallel ever since. We worked collaboratively with older adults for about 10 years at assorted Inland Empire assisted living facilities and skilled nursing facilities. He would often do patient assessments and I would assist the families, or he would provide nursing staff and training on subjects like how to deal with agitated clients, and I would help the families understand the new chapter they just began as caregivers. Dr. McMahon stayed tethered a little bit with the senior mental health care for about 15 years and devoted his professional life to working with the criminally insane at Patton State Hospital, where he still works. In his spare time, he's faculty at the University of Laverne and Redlands University, where he teaches budding therapists and doctors how to work with addicts, seniors, and the mentally ill. In fact, I've even guest taught alongside of him in the college classes and can tell you this about him. He is knowledgeable and passionate about seniors and their mental health. He's such a happy person and fun to be around, always upbeat and positive. He wrote the mental health chapter in my book, The Complete Resource Guide for Baby Boomers. And whenever I interact with him, I smile. You're in for a big treat today. When I asked my friend Dr. McMahon to lecture for our Inland Caregivers organization, he was a bit hesitant, but when I mentioned that the theme of today's caregiving symposium was caring for ourselves by caring for plants, he jumped at the chance. He's an avid gardener since childhood. Dr. McMahon is known to grow a variety of peculiar vegetables in his inside garden and outside garden, and even in his front yard. That's right, even in his front yard, he has beets and rutabaga and pomelos, lavender, pomegranates, and tomatoes. He tells me that his neighbors often give him funny looks when he's out gardening by the sidewalk, but after a day of working at Patton Hospital, he told me he finds nothing more relaxing and nurturing for his soul than his horticulture hobby. If you have questions for Dr. McMahon during his presentation, please put them in the chat box and he will address them after he speaks. Without further ado, please welcome Dr. Paul McMahon.
Oh, thank you, Darlene, for that wonderful introduction. And let me tell you, the last couple decades, our friendship has been my blessing. So it's lovely to work with you and the ICRC in this presentation today. I'm honored to be here to talk about two subjects that are very passionate to me that actually come together nicely, and that is caregiving, whether we're caregiving for our family members, our parents, our children, or spouse, and growing things and gardening. And coincidentally, this coming together of these two things is a very nice fit for me today. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this very thing. My presentation today is about how we can care for ourselves and our whole body as we take on the rigors of caring for others. And I would like to start just by giving you a tiny bit of my rationale. When I look at my patients, when I look at those that I care for, when I look at my friends and my family, and even myself, I look at us as creatures who are biological, psychological, we are social animals, and we are spiritual beings. So I adopt what you might call the biopsychosocial spiritual model. And we're going to kind of look at this model as it impacts our care of other people and our own selves as we care for other people. For instance, I am a biological creature. I'm a 57-year-old man. I am 6 feet tall. I have gray hair. But I'm also a psychological creature. Independent of my biology, I'm also a man of passion, a man of jealousy, a man of laughter and rage. I have psychological characteristics that come to play in being a caregiver. And these aspects of my mental health can also suffer sometimes in the art of my caregiving. In addition to being a biological and a psychological creature, I'm also a social creature. I'm a son, I'm a doctor, I'm a friend. And sometimes caregiving impacts those elements of who I am. Maybe not so much my biology or my mental health, but it might be interfering with me as a social animal. And we'll be talking about these different constructs today. And then finally, I'd like to say that most people believe that they are spiritual creatures, and caregiving can also impact our spirit. So what I'd like to do is talk about these 4 areas that kind of constitute the whole person that we are, that define the whole person, whoever it is we are caring for, and talk about how caregiving impacts these elements of our lives and how planting and gardening can help us walk that path. The first thing I would like to talk about is us as biological creatures, because sometimes that's the first thing we go to when someone says, "How's it going for you, Dr. McMahon? You've been working with patients at Patton State Hospital all day long. How you doing?" And the first thing we might say is to describe our body, going, oh my God, I'm so sore, or I'm so stressed out, or I'm just so tired. I've lost my appetite, or I can't sleep. And we talk about ourselves as biological creatures. And when it comes to caregiving, some things that might occur in the course of being a caregiver could be things you might not even notice and has to be pointed out to you. Perhaps you've got bags under your eyes, and I often have these after a long day of work. More often than not, though, I tend to own my anxiety and stress with muscle soreness. Some of my friends get other concerns, gastrointestinal problems, or a jitteriness, or palpitations. I myself get sore muscles. I know I'm having a rough day of caregiving or other tasks when I have trouble moving my head from side to side. Other physical hints that something might need addressing as a caregiver could be perhaps some recent weight gain or even some recent weight loss if neither one of these were planned upon. Perhaps you have sleep difficulties. Now, a lot of us have sleep difficulties, but maybe these sleep difficulties have now exacerbated to the point where you're tossing and turning, or you can't get to sleep for hours, or you wake up at 3 or 4 in the morning and you can't get back to sleep. Perhaps biologically, the way your body's reacting to caregiving stress could be just old school tiredness. Coming home pooped. Starting your day pooped. Just being tired is another sign that sometimes the caregiving might be a little bit of a burden. Other idiosyncratic things, some people have told me that they get dry eyes, dry mouth, dry skin. Is that stress? Is it dehydration? Is it our beautiful Southern California sunshine, but something's going wrong with the body? Perhaps sweating too much, skin interruptions. What I'm getting at is that the body can result in a profile of aggravations that's different from one caregiver to the next. We're all going to feel our stress differently. And I would never trade out my sore muscles for someone else's gastrointestinal difficulties and vice versa, but it is vexing to me nonetheless. What this is like is when it adds up and I'm having a particularly bad day and a bad week and a bad month, perhaps with a lot of patient care and a lot of drama going on at the hospital and perhaps in my own life, it feels sometimes like, oh my God, right now my life is circling the drain, that my sleep schedule is bad. My diet, I'm not following those New Year's Eve resolutions. And my exercise routine, well, I'm going to use the COVID excuse that I can't exercise because we're on lockdown. And after I let a few of my healthy hobbies go a little ways away, I might feel biologically beaten down. So what can we do about that? As caregivers, it's crucial that we stay strong and we push forward. We're all going to have rough days. And for goodness sakes, this past year, we've all been going through a rough year. And it's important to acknowledge that this last year for everyone, caregivers, those we care for, our neighbors, friends, and family have all been put under additional stress this last year. So what are some things we can do, not necessarily for who we are as a social creature or who we can do in our relationship with God or who we are in our own mind, but biologically, what are some things we can do right now to help us remain strong? And the first and foremost is to make time for sleep. Sleep is the royal road to mental health. When I get new patients in the hospital, a question I'll often ask is, how many of you had rotten sleep before having a mental crisis requiring a hospitalization? And 95 out of 100 times, everyone says, oh, I was at my wit's end in the sleeping department. So make time. Even if that means napping during the day or going to bed a little bit earlier every night, that is precious. So please, if I were to order these, that is probably the number one thing you can do is guard and value your sleep time. The exercise routine often needs refreshing. My gardening outside is a good deal of my exercise routine. The standing up, the getting down, and the carrying of plants here and there, and bringing 15 bags of soil in from the store. There's some exercise involved in this, and I'm happy about that. As exercise routines change across a lifetime, gardening is just right for me. Eating habits, healthier eating habits, I don't need to nag you. You and I already know that we need to improve our healthy eating habits. I don't know if you can see the small picture on the screen there, but this was at a very luxurious dinner I had a couple years ago in Las Vegas, and it is both the worst thing in the world and the best thing in the world. And the worst by fattiness. On that table, you see some butter and some foie gras, and you see some really rich foods. True, these were indulgences, but I had broken bread that day with a table full of friends. I had made time to celebrate dining with loved ones. And so the eating habit was indeed healthy in terms of the social component. I probably could have done a little bit better with the actual food choices. Another thing we've got to get back to is laughter. Now, you heard Darlene say in that wonderful introduction that she and I share laughs and smiles all the time. And you really should see us together. We are constantly having a great moment together. And it's important to bring that to our caregiving, even though sometimes it's a struggle. And whether that means watching a comedy television show with a loved one, telling a joke, or simply enjoying something that you both find humorous, do your best to search out those opportunities. And if you can't do a good belly laugh, at least paint on a smile. It is tempting to frown and complain and whine an awful lot in this day and age when we are going through such a global struggle. But do your best. Whatever you can do is to smile your way through it. Sometimes they are contagious, and someone sees your smile, and before you know it, they're smiling. So do your best to share that joy with others. We've also heard this other thing about our body is that 8 glasses of water are critical, and they are. But if you can't get to water, and I do want to point out, Darlene mentioned the nice self-care kit that was sent out by the Caregivers Association, and they included, an insert to go into your water to make it taste all the better. So even if you have to flavor your water a tiny bit, do your best to get hydrated. Now, I'm not suggesting a lot of alcohol, but soda pop, orange juice, colas aren't the enemy if that's the only thing you're going to drink. Yes, water is the best. Do your best to drink 8 glasses of water a day. But my message is stay hydrated, especially now that we're in June, headed to July. Do your best to stay hydrated. I think Darlene has some special meditation videos coming up in about 45 minutes that will talk about stretching and meditation. I would like to remind people of this one activity that we can all do together today. We're going to do it several times during my lecture. It's free, it's easy. No matter how stressed out you are, this will help calm you down. And it is to do 3 deep breaths. Do them with me if you'd like. I prefer personally to close my eyes when I'm doing it, but please, if you're going to take your deep breaths while driving the car, don't close your eyes. But these can be done in the bank line when you're frustrated or when you're with your family and you're frustrated. But draw a deep breath in through the nose, hold it for a moment, and now let it all go. One more time, a deep breath in. Hold that energizing breath in for a second and now let it out. And I lied about one more time a minute ago. We're going to do one more. Hold in a nice deep breath. And this time let all that bodily tension drain down and out your body. Thank you. We're going to do that a few times today. All right, the next kind of construct, the next sort of part of what I am, the overlay, the psychological component is that we're not just biological creatures. I'm not just what you see. That's important, but I'm also a psychological creature. I'm a man of passions and lust and jealousy and anger and joy, and I've got so much going on psychologically that is, in a sense, separate from who I am as a biological creature. And sometimes symptomology of caregiver stress is biological, but very often I am put upon by psychological symptoms that are hints that maybe I'm stressed out or depressed or tense. And some of these mental health symptoms could include having just a negative attitude, where before maybe you had a rather common attitude, upbeat one even, but you find that you're being negative, and negativity ruins a whole day. Maybe you are actually depressed, and not just the fleeting, oh, I'm unhappy because I got a bad mark on a test I just took, or I just got a moving violation from a police officer, but I mean truly depressed. You are sorrowful, perhaps tearful, and desperate in your thinking. These are important issues to talk about with your friends and families, loved ones, and maybe even a professional. If you find yourself getting truly depressed, then it needs to be addressed. Depression can lift, and there can be hope. Other psychological symptoms could be that I struggle focusing, or I'm just not getting my job done. I'm dilly-dallying instead of doing one simple task. In my family, we have a good deal of forgetfulness, so it's very common, and we laugh, my mother and I, we joke about our forgetfulness until after a whole day of forgetfulness and we keep having to go back to do things we forgot, we start realizing maybe we're a little bit more stressed out today than we think. Forgetfulness could be a clue to caregiver stress, or losing things, or some bad habits. Perhaps some addictive habits are taking hold because stress of life or caregiving is burdensome. Sometimes too, we just have some all or none thinking, or we have what we would call catastrophic thinking, and we can't even come and make up a simple decision. For me, what happens is sometimes it involves my very garden. I will set out a garden going, oh, what do I plant this year? What do I plant today? I'm stuck, and I'm debating, and I'm looking at all these packets of seeds, and I say, what to pick? And I'm lost in thoughts, and I'm stressed out from work. Sometimes what you have to do is relax, take a breath, and ask a friend. So what I would like help from you, our audience today, is help making a decision for me today. I would seriously labor over this simple choice at home under some stressful conditions for a day or two when it's a simple choice. Should I plant the basil seeds that the organization here was kind enough to mail me? Or should I plant these beet seeds that I got at the market a couple of weeks ago? Or should I plant both? So I'm going to reach out to you right now. Those of you who are willing to help me with this decision, please vote that today on camera in about 20 minutes, 10-20 minutes, I either plant the basil, the beets, or both. You type that into the chat room. You help me get rid of the stress of my indecisiveness. Have friends and family help you make up simple decisions to make life push forward. So, in my thinking, this is sometimes what goes wrong, and I want to share with you what happens to me with my thinking. I have a perfectly great day. I've got a good day at work. 8, 9, 10 hours at the hospital go wonderful, right? But in the morning, I started out in the morning and I'm tying my shoes and I break my shoelaces and it's vexing, but it's not that big of a deal. And then I go to work and I have a great day at work. On the way home from work, I swing by the supermarket to pick up a few things. and I see there's a line and I'm gonna be in line for all of 8 or 10 minutes. I get home and I'm asked, how did your day go? I have forgotten that 8 or 10 hours were wonderful. And I'm focusing on the broken shoelace and waiting in line at the market, and I'm catastrophizing my thinking. It was the worst day of my life. I have to catch myself from this whininess, from this catastrophizing over things that are perfectly fixable, handleable, and be a little less catastrophic in my thinking. So what are some things that we can do when we find that our thinking has become a bit burdened by stress or unhappiness? How do we get our mind back? It is not something we want to lose in this day and age. So some of the things we could do would be to renew your interest. And in fact, the Caregivers organization has helped you with that. As Darlene pointed out, many of you got the package, the resource package, and it included my interest of gardening. And it included, for instance, some basil seeds in my particular packet. And so I'm forever renewing my garden interest, and every year it's a new batch of vegetables or fruits I'm trying out. But maybe it's time for you to get back to something you once enjoyed, whether it's playing the ukulele or doing needlepoint. Not every hobby has to cost a lot of money or any money, but renew your interest. Something free and fun could be reading. Maybe you simply got out of flipping through magazines, which used to bring you joy, or nonfiction, or go to the library. My third point down here you can see on the screen in front of you is a suggestion that for a few hours every day, stare at a different piece of furniture. You've been staring at this one piece of furniture for several hours. Some of you are staring at it right now, looking at me, and I'm being a little facetious, of course. But we find ourselves watching that television set 4, 5, 7 hours a day, and now during the pandemic, we're glued to it for even more hours. Set some limits for yourselves. Listen to the radio. Do something different to try and find some solace for yourself. Schedule time to relax. These deep breathings that we'll be doing today and the meditations that Darlene will be introducing later are things that can only take maybe just a few minutes, and you might want to schedule that. So that. Sometimes adding more structure, maybe calendaring out your week so things aren't so running by the seat of your pants, as it were, and schedule things could help ease your mind a bit. The notion of therapy, whether you're going to go see a psychologist or an MFT, LPCC, you have this whole wide variety of therapists to see here in the United States. And sometimes we need to bite the bullet, and if you're embarrassed or ashamed to go to therapy, well, not the whole world has to know, and maybe it's time to reach out. Plenty of resources out there available if stress is really making you a bit mentally upset. Along with that, maybe it is also time to consider medications, and maybe if the depression has got a hold, it is perhaps time to talk to a professional about the possibility of an antidepressant. These are important decisions to be made with you and a mental health professional. But if you are having mental health struggles, there are many things you can do about it other than live in those mental health struggles. If you're like me, as I've hinted at, I ruminate on the negative stuff sometimes, and I've got to say to myself, stop it, Paul, let it go, and just be able to shake it off. One thing that really helps me shake off bad news, whether I've just cut myself out in the garden or I've gotten into an actual fight with a client, a patient, is for me to pull back, re-energize, and do 3 deep breaths. So this time when we do our 3 deep breaths, I'd like you to think of any mental health struggle you're obsessed with or catastrophizing or struggling with. Think about that for a moment, and this time we're going to let that one go. So with me, please, in through the nose. Hold it for a moment, and now let go of that mental stress. Good job. Energizing deep breath in. Feel that wonderful deep breath energizing you, and now let go of that tension. You don't need it. Third, good deep breath in. Hold that deep breath, and now let all that stress just melt out of you. Very good. Now we're going to move over to another element of what we are, because we are also social animals. We're just not biological creatures, and I'm not just in my own head. I'm a social animal. As you could infer from Darlene's introduction, I'm her friend. She introduced me as both a professor as well as a doctor at Patton State Hospital. I'm a son, I'm a brother, I have many social roles, and I am fortunate to enjoy all of them. But sometimes our social life is the part of our life that suffers in caregiving. And I know that caregiving can be all-consuming in a sense, that maybe your caregiving responsibilities do take up the bulk of the hours of your day. So your social life will therefore suffer. What I'm suggesting are find ways in which to help your social life blossom. The opposite of that, how the stress might evidence itself, could be that you are a bit more fighty than usual, argumentative, a little more prickly than usual. Maybe you find that you have a short fuse, and that people say the most benign thing to you and you go off on them. You personalize things. You perhaps feel put upon. You start to think that the world is against you, even though you're a part of this social fabric. You might find yourself isolating, which isn't always bad. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes our private time, a little bit of independence is a good thing to also nurture our soul, but don't make a habit of it. Hermits generally don't have good mental health, I would guess. So isolating needs to be nipped in the bud, and sometimes we have to force ourselves to go to that family affair that you'd otherwise like to take a pass on, or involve yourself in the work picnic or something, and force yourself to be back in the social mix of things. As I alluded to in the prior slide, to try to avoid substances best you can. If you're struggling with caregiver burden that's impacting your biology, your mental health, and your social life, it might not be a very good time for you to overindulge in substances. It is perhaps a time to rethink that kind of lifestyle. Other bad signs that have occurred with me is I become procrastinating and tardy and late in some of my assignments. And as a doctor, that's not a very good thing to do. And when I see this pattern, I know that, oh boy, something's up, and I need to address these concerns. I don't want to be absent ever for any patient care, but sometimes being almost a perpetual caregiver across so many jobs and my family life, it is almost as though I want to run away. But I know in doing so, I will only make my problems worse. And I think then finally, one of the worst things I can do in the social reality of who I am is start fibbing and making excuses for my behavior or lying. And it's at that point where I know, oh my goodness, I haven't been addressing my stress as a care provider. And I'm also talking about myself as an informal care provider for those I care for. My mother is a very robust woman at 83 and is still very independent, but she is aging, and now I help her with some of the driving and some of these other tasks that need doing. So today's lecture, I'm talking both to the informal caregivers, and I know we have many professional caregivers and nurses and therapists who are watching today too. So these problems can occur whether you are paid to be a caregiver or this is out of your own heart. often this is how I feel in terms of me and my social life. And I feel that sometimes the weight of the world is upon me. I have job concerns, individual patient concerns, concerns with the nurses that I work with. I have the students that I teach, and I want to make sure I give good lectures and that they're learning the subject. In addition to all that, I've got family responsibilities, household responsibilities, all the way down to cats and dog responsibilities, and of course the plants I'll be talking about, and some personal responsibilities. So what do we do when it comes to our social reality? How do we get our life back as a social creature? Well, I'm going to start with one thing that I do, and this is, Darlene said it when she invited me to do this lecture. I thought, oh, I'll do it for you, Darlene, because I love you. And then she said, yeah, Paul, but it's about planting and gardening and agriculture stuff. And I said, I'm on it, because one thing I love to do with my friends, and one of the main reasons I garden, is not to eat the vegetables myself. Truth be told, I'm not the best vegetable eater in the world, but I love giving them away. And today I brought from my garden some success stories. I brought a small bunch of very colorful carrots that I'll be giving to some of our production crew here today. I brought a rutabaga from the garden. This is a very interesting, kind of like a parsnip or a turnip. And we will see if anyone on our production team today wants the freshest tomatoes I just picked from the garden a couple of hours ago. And I think our production manager, Janelle, has already got first dibs on the beets that I brought in today. And my point is that when Darlene said I'd be coming to do this, my first thought was, how can I give of myself, of my garden? I really enjoy doing that. Much as someone who's into sewing or crocheting, knitting, often does that, not for themselves, but so that they can give it to the people in their lives. And it is for this reason, this gardening, though sort of a solitary hobby, ends up being a very social hobby for me, because I'm able to give these plants and the products away. If I can get that one screen back on, there we go. So some of my suggestions might be, if you're going to pick up a hobby, try to make it a social hobby. Don't just learn guitar for yourself, but go play for others. If you're going to learn to knit, knit something for the person you're giving care to. Sometimes scheduling our caregiving and scheduling our non-caregiving become crucial. So part of getting some solid foundation in our social life is to schedule family time. Write yourself a note, an email, a text to a loved one. It takes 10, 20 seconds and you've brightened someone's day. Give back best you can. Do some volunteer work if it's in your soul to do that. And I think what this year of pandemic has taught me is that there are thousands of worthy opportunities for volunteering online that are heartfelt, touching, beautiful things you can do to people, and you don't have to be in the same room with them. So look for volunteer opportunities that are online if you are so inclined. My related hobby, of course, I like to grow food, and then I like to cook. I'm a cook, so two of my hobbies, even though they sound solitary, alone in the garden, alone in the kitchen, are social in that I really love doing this for other people. So I cook for friends. And if you're not much of a cook, well, then you can still, pour the soda pop into the glass. You can be a part of breaking bread with those you care for. Eat, drink, and be merry. Just make sure you do it with other people. Breaking bread is a social event meant to nurture not just our gut, but our soul. Other thing I like to do is, without lying, try to compliment someone every day, and do your best just to make someone else feel good. If you have to lie, it's not the worst sin in the world, but certainly there is something you can compliment to someone every single day. I don't know if you've just tuned in, you missed Darlene's introduction, but you'll see her again in about 10 or 15 minutes when she comes back. And since I've known her for the last 20 years, she always gets so many compliments on her hair because it's beautiful. And I love watching Darlene smile. So when I've seen that happen to her, it brightens up my day. So watching someone compliment someone else puts a smile on my face. Other things to do for your social life is strangely take your breaks. And whether you are working with someone who you love dearly in a caregiving responsibility, or you are paid to do that caregiving, you need to take some breathers. And we're going to take some breathers right now. This time, when we take our breaths in and out, what I'd like you to concentrate perhaps is on any physical tension you have in your body. So take a moment right now and think mentally, do you have it in your shoulders, in your back, your lower back? Has it been in your knees or your hips, your ankles, your forehead? Focus on that when we do our 3 deep breaths. I've got my sweet spot myself on my upper shoulder. That's what I'm focusing on. But you focus on whatever area of the body you need to let the tension go from. So in through the nose, hold it for a moment, feel that sort of tension, and now let it go. Oh, nice. Second of 3 breaths in. Nice deep breath in, hold on to it, feel those lungs fill up, and now let that bodily stress go. One more final deep breath in. Oh, nice. Hold on to that energy, and now let out the stress. Very good. Now what I'd like to do is move on to this 4th kind of arena, cluster, area that I feel makes up who we are. Now, I'm not pushing any particular agenda of any faith or religion, and this also rings true to people who perhaps share different faiths than me, or don't even have a faith, might not believe that God exists, or isn't even sure. It is still about who we are in the bigger picture, who we are right here on this planet together. If it helps you to think of this in terms of a Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Native American context, that's fine also. I'm appreciative of all these wonderful beliefs, but I find that sometimes when I give my care to my clientele at the hospital and to the students and my family and my friends and my neighbors and the plants and the cat, that sometimes I feel like, oh, God, am I alone in the universe? Are you there? Is anyone listening? And it can feel very solitary when I let this stress mount up. My spiritual routine is gone. You might find yourself under caregiver burden, maybe not going to church as often or wherever you go. If you're a prayerful person normally, maybe you're not praying as much, or you find that the tenor of your prayers has gone from upbeat to, oh, help. There's nothing wrong with that, but if enough of these clues start to add up, then maybe your spiritual reality is also being affected by some caregiver stress. This notion of feeling hopeless and helpless and alone could be about your relationship with your higher power, with God, as you see him or her. Feeling like you have no purpose, feeling stuck in a rut. These are sort of spiritual dilemmas that can weigh on you as much as a migraine, as much as being rejected by other people, right? As much as having tearful sorrow. And what can result from this is making excuses for yourself, for the people around you, not really doing that deep investment that life is all about, our passions. And ultimately, this caregiver stress can have you questioning the nature of your relationship with a higher power. And there's nothing wrong with questioning these things, But I just hope that you find that your caregiving life doesn't bring you ill health, but good health. So sometimes a lot of my clients feel stuck. They say, I don't know how to move. I can't move forward, backward, sideways, anywhere. My emotions are off. My body is off. My relationship with God is off. I'm off and I'm stuck. And what do I do about that? So this fourth cluster of things is the spiritual component is what I want to talk about now as we kind of push towards this last chapter of my lecture of the 4 areas that caregiving can impact us, how it impacts us, and what we can do about it. If you find that your spiritual heart is being burdened, then maybe some things you can try to do is, I'm not saying it's easy, but let go of that guilt. So you're not the perfect caregiver. So then last time you tried helping someone in the shower, things got messy and uncomfortable. It's done. Let it go. Let go of the shame. Let go of the guilt. No one is forcing you to hold on to that. So try to let it go. Try to be creative. Try to think of new options. You were likely a creative person or still are, so get in there and continue to be creative even with your spirituality. If caregiving means you can't get to church as often, bring church to you. If you're going to work and your caregiving duties are at work, bring God with you. There's nothing wrong with that. If you can do your best, do what you can to see the God in your coworkers as well as your caregivee, if that is what you're inclined to do. You notice I put this word in all caps. Stop yourself from being bitchy all the time. And the reason I have it in all caps, and pardon my language, but sometimes it has to be that blatant. When you find yourself on a roll of negativity, you just have to say, stop. And frankly, I don't care if someone sees me say it and I look a bit foolish. I'm doing something to stop a train of thought that's probably been going on for an hour or two since I drove home from work. And if that's what I have to do to shake myself out of it, then that's what I will do. And try to acknowledge the joys and the heartbreak in other people by simply asking them these questions of how you feeling and how are you doing, and do your best to stay with that. If you struggle on your purpose and the bigger issues, talk about these things with your loved ones, and don't forget prayer. What I would like to do when I do my stuff is the 3 deep breaths, and this time, maybe what you could do is when you breathe in, as you describe God, you can invite God into your soul, or continue working on relaxing. But I'm going to do the 3 final things before we see which seed I'm going to plant very quickly. And we will wrap this up in a minute. But 3 deep breaths together. In through the nose. Breathe in that good spirit and let out that negativity. Second one, breathe in some good news. Oh, and let go of all that bad news. You don't need to hold on to it. And today's 3rd breath, final breath in. Hold it and let go of any last bits of stress. I'm going to look over at our producer today to see who won. Oh, and the fans, 99% of you wrote in and said of them, don't just pick beets or basil, but you have decided by an overwhelming majority that I will plant both. So I will do just that as we wrap up my presentation today. And I just want to wrap it up by showing you how easy it's done. This is it. You dig holes, you take the seeds, and you just sprinkle them in and you cover them with dirt. Done. I didn't measure down 1.5 inches, and I didn't wait for further instructions. That's as easy as it is. I'm going to water this every day. I'm going to have it in full sun, and in about 3 months, I'm going to have big, beautiful beets. And watching these grow will bring joy to my body, my mind, my heart, and my soul. So I want to thank you all for joining us today. This has been my pleasure being with you today, sharing my experiences on caregiver stress. I do believe we have left some time for questions and answers. I'm going to now give the show back to my good friend, Darlene.
Dr. McMahon, thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. Our audience sure loved it, and they have some questions for you.
My pleasure.
The first one is, how do we encourage our loved one with a TBI who doesn't like to drink water to stay more hydrated?
Oh my goodness, that is an excellent question, and I know that you as well as I have some clever tips. Now, some of these things are really silly, and they're not for everyone, but I have my favorite cups and drinking implements at home. We all have a bunch of glasses in the cupboard, but I have some very important ones that are meaningful to me. A coffee mug that I got from a vacation I took. So sometimes bringing someone their favorite mug to drink out of is one thing to do. Sometimes too we need to mix it up, and maybe what they don't like is plain water and you need to supplement it or make it fizzy. Sometimes drinking with them, instead of just handing someone the drinking implement, but saying, look, I brought us both a soda pop, or I brought us both glasses of water, and drinking with your loved one also helps. Darlene, I have to fly this one back to you because you're in the business as well, and I bet you have fielded this question. And you're right, traumatic brain injured people sometimes don't even have a sense of thirst it might be broken. Like our sense of thirst works normally, a TBI might make it off a bit. Mm-hmm. What suggestions do you think?
Well, I think your suggestions were great. And I think the key is also finding what the person likes to drink.
Amen.
And changing it up in the container is a good idea too. I like that. Thank you.
I'll drink to that.
I hope that answered their question for them. The second question is, any plants you recommend for beginners? I definitely do not have a green thumb and it gets discouraging.
Amen. And don't be discouraged. Did you see what I just did? It's just that simple. And I think when we overthink it, you might have not have noticed, but about a dozen seeds fell into a pot that's probably going to be good for 3 beets. So of those dozen, if 8 pop up, it's still going to be a bit overcrowded, but they're fine. These seed packets are going to have tons of seeds. Just go for it. Have faith in yourself. Some of my main tidbits, we're very fortunate to live in Southern California, here where we're filming from, where we're in what we call Zone 9, where it's almost perpetual sunshine and warm weather, so we can grow almost anything. But to answer your question, probably the simplest ones would be tomatoes and peppers. And what I have today is a very little tomato plant here that seems to be thriving. You can see that this here is a pepper plant. What I might suggest to the real novice person is buying a plant, a small one at the nursery, a seedling we would call it, and start from there. Start with seedlings. If you're into it and you find that you like it, move to growing things from seed in the next chapter, in the next winter, start that. But for a true beginner, I would go to the nursery and I would start with plants, and peppers and tomatoes, provided they get a lot of water and a lot of sun, you cannot go wrong with in Southern California. A lot of water, a lot of sun.
Good tip. Start out simple, right? Easy.
Yes.
Okay. The next question is, how do you describe 3 deep breaths to us caregivers who have asthma or COPD?
An excellent question. You're right. I gave kind of the generic one, and in fact, for a lot of people, my main advice of breathing in through the nose is difficult. And so please you don't have to do it my way. A lot of people don't like closing their eyes. A lot of people don't like breathing in through the nose, and that's probably one of the main things you're talking about. So see, for starters, if you can do a slower breath through the mouth, and sometimes pursing our lips a little bit to draw the breath in a little bit slowly like this. and then push it out a little slowly. What I just did wasn't nearly as deep a breath as earlier, but I did take about 5 seconds just now to focus, to center myself. So if even getting oxygen in and out wasn't my main agenda, at least for a moment I was able to let go of some stress and focus on a little breath. COPD and other breathing disorders do make deep breathing difficult, and you'll have to forgive our industry for forever calling it deep breathing. Focused breathing, relaxed breathing might be a nicer way of looking at this, that the depth isn't always what we're looking for, but in my case, the distraction. So other things to do would be to pick a time at the end of your day, pick a time when you're in the shower, pick a time after every meal that is uninterruptible to do 30 seconds instead of a specific number of deep breaths. Just say for 30 seconds, 3 times a day, it's me and breathing and focusing just on my breaths. Other tips to consider would be putting both feet flat on the floor when you do it, uncrossing your legs, letting the circulation go all the way through. Open or close your eyes as you see fit. And do your best with the cards you've been dealt. And if right now you're struggling with very short breaths, that's what you've got. Make the most of it by getting away from other people and doing those short breaths in a more relaxing environment, perhaps. I myself don't do all 3 religiously. Every time I do 3 deep breaths in the garden, I'm very often going, oh. Okay, Paul, carry on. And it's just sometimes one breath to refocus. Good luck with that.
Good suggestions.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yes.
The next question is, are there any other ways we can increase our water intake?
Amen. You know, and it's wonderful. I love this theme that we're talking about water because the summer's coming and Southern Californians tend to underestimate the amount of hydration we need. And since we're talking a lot today about seniors, an interesting fact that we forget is that we're losing our vision as we age. We lose our sense of hearing as we age. What we forget that we lose is our sense of thirst. As a child coming in from mowing the lawn, I knew I was thirsty, but sometimes when you're a senior, you forget that you're thirsty, and so we forget. So you might have to schedule getting water in there. What was the question, Darlene?
How can they increase their water intake?
And again, sometimes it is a matter of scheduling on your phone if you have a clock or a countdown. Some of my friends bring in the big container of water to work and they don't leave work till it's empty, and I don't mean down the sink. So what they do is they specifically set themselves up with large jogging water bottles. And they just say, my goal is to do this all day. I don't want to walk back to my car and go home from work with water still in this. Other things to do, like I say, strangely, a lot of people who can afford a couple extra dollars like the fancy waters. And if it's going to make you drink water, if you have Perrier or these other fancy ones, treat yourself. An indulgence rather than dehydration. I discovered these carbonation machines a few years ago where I can now carbonate 0-calorie water, put a little flavoring in it for 10 calories, and I feel so good about myself. I have mostly water, 10 calories of sugar, but because it's carbonated, I've had fun with it, and I'm more hydrated now than in the last several years since doing that little trick. There are a lot of tricks to up your water intake, but please don't neglect it. I'm glad we are focusing a lot on that today. Summer is hot, we dehydrate quickly, and the older we get, we do not metabolize and maintain our water as well as we once did. You might notice we urinate a bit more as we age because the body seems to come and go easier, so we need to replenish more often. If you find that you like lukewarm water, that's fine. Gotta have a lot of ice, that's fine. Just get the hydration in there. Also, what I said earlier, I hold on to. While I'm not talking too much coffee or alcohol, non-water hydration is important if you utterly detest water, and I get that. I'm not down on other drinks. Watch the sugar, but soda pop or juices are better than being dehydrated. And stay hydrated. We're in a world now where everyone's walking around comfortably with their water and their coffee containers.
Yeah.
And I think, but a lot of people happen to have several, one or two in the back of the seat of the car at this point, and a couple in the cabinet. And that's a wonderful thing. Have them readily available. I keep my water containers with the water in the refrigerator, so when I leave for work, they're nice and cold. So come up with some game plans, but stay hydrated. It is so good for mental clarity, for skin quality, for moving the joints to stay hydrated. Excellent question.
Good tips too.
Sure.
Thank you. Okay, this person speaks in metaphors. If gardening was caregiving, I am dried soil in the shade and ignored. How can I change my environment slowly for a good outcome?
All right. Well, exactly. And there are no easy answers. It's a great question. I know that caregiving and independent of caregiving, just being an American this past year has made a lot of us feel like withered plants in the shade. We're all going through this pandemic stuff that seems to be lifting, which is great. But I can relate to that. Anyone can relate to what you're saying about feeling like, oh, I'm pooped, I have no energy. I myself need some caregiving. And one thing you can do is reach out and ask for help. You just now, you typed into our chat room this very question, meaning you have the skill set to reach out. So reach out further. Darlene mentioned the phone number, for instance, of our local caregiver organization, and we can probably flash that again for one thing. And one thing you could do is even call that phone number and get a copy of this. I see it's being flashed on the screen now. She invited you to reach out to this agency on Monday to get one of these lovely packets. Change often doesn't happen overnight, and though Hollywood would have us believe that epiphanies and warmies blossom into an explosion of a bouquet of love, it sometimes doesn't work that way, and it's baby steps, and it's doing something like watching this program today and typing in the chat box and inching yourself out of the shade and into the sunlight. This is about rekindling old relationships, and it's about altering current habits, stopping some habits and starting new ones and modifying ones. The beauty of gardening is that I get to refresh this hobby of mine every year. And what you could do, like the other caller had asked, is start low. Start with a hobby such as what I'm pushing, gardening, but start with any hobby. And even if you're caregiving for yourself, if you can't caregive for yourself, you're not going to be too good at caregiving for others. So start a hobby. Get that sunshine on yourself, even if it's you giving yourself the attaboys. And as you find this pandemic lifting, literally get out of the house and go find someone to hug. A hug is a cure-all. A hug is what I wish I could give all of you right now. Hugging and that human contact has been absent in our life for the last year. So thank goodness those clouds are lifting and we can become those social animals again, but it takes initiative on your part to get up and do that. I find that when I'm at my saddest too, some of the things I talked about, and that the easier things would be to get a good night's sleep. I personally get up at the same time every day, even on Saturdays and Sundays, and it gets my day up and going. Then one of the first things I do in the morning is reach out to another human on text, telephone, email, so that there is a tether to other people. And then I ask for others' input, like I ask people questions where I might eventually come up with the answer myself, like, basil versus beets, but it doesn't hurt to reach out and get some connection even for minor things. To finish your metaphor of withering because of lack of water, well, go and hydrate yourself with other people. Sometimes breaking bread and drinking with others is a way to make sure that it happens in a fashion that includes love and support as well. This year of misery, and also whatever you might personally be going through, is temporary, and we will overcome. We will push forward. It has been a challenging year for all of us, and those of us additionally challenged with caregiving during this peculiar year, we do have to brush off a lot of cobwebs, and some of us have to start all over again. But that's what we humans do. We reinvent ourselves. We do a great job of that. And this lifting of the pandemic and the beginning of the summer and here at the tail end of the spring is a great time to reinvent yourself and also reinvent yourself as a caregiver. I hope that helps.
Yeah, good answers. Okay, the next question is, at what point do I seek medical attention and help if I feel helpless and down?
Oh, a wonderful question. We've all struggled with that. Everyone has had a boo-boo. And I know you're talking mentally, but the metaphor is the same. You might see a blemish on your arm and go, is this something that needs a doctor's attention? Or is this something that is benign and I can handle it? And these are subjective questions that you have to answer for yourself. When it comes to mental health issues, some clues of when you really need to perhaps reach out to a nurse or a therapist, a psychiatrist or a psychologist, or reach out to the Inland Caregiver Center here, could be if some of your thinking has taken you down to a truly dark path of wanting to give up. And that could be as desperate as thinking of ending your own life. Suicide. If you're having thoughts that desperate, then that is indeed when you need to reach out to helplines, professionals, your doctor, your healthcare provider, to do something about it. Do you wait till you're suicidal? No. If you are having thoughts of, maybe you're not planning your own death, but you just want to give up. You just want to not wake up tomorrow. If only the stress were all gone and my family were all gone and I was all gone. You might not be thinking of suicide, but you are thinking rather fatalistically, which could result in just a dour month, a week, year. You know when to reach out for help when biologically your body's having reactions more than I've been describing today. Or you're having all those symptoms all added up. Rare is the person who has all the bad news I talked about today. But if you are someone who's normally I just get a sore back and some palpitations, but also I'm having difficulty breathing and I'm finding, I'm having trouble keeping my food down. If there's an accumulation of physical sequelae, you've got nothing to lose by reaching out and asking. So again, I don't have a specific definitive answer for you other than the more extreme cases. Definitely seek out professional help if your thoughts go to a really dark place. And that's kind of the area of depression and unhappiness and sadness. Some caregivers don't get that though. We don't get depressed. We get stressed out and tense and nervous. When that gets out of hand, when you might need some professional help and not just a hobby, might be when your decision making begins to get really poor and you're overindulging in alcohol or drugs, misusing your prescription medication, hoarding your prescription medication. These are all signs that the stress is adding up. And behavioral health, mental health, therapy, talking to someone can help ease that burden and teach you new ways to cope with both caregiving and life. So again, I'm sorry I don't have specific, this is when you call a doctor, but we're all pretty good at knowing when it's out of control. I don't know, Darlene, do you have anything to add to that, to my advice?
I would definitely recommend them calling Inland Caregiver Resource Center. Maybe we could put that number up there again, 1-800-675-6694. And we have 16 master degree social workers here ready to help you. And if they feel that you need more help than what we can provide, they certainly will get that for you. So start out by calling here, and then we'll go from there if you don't have a hotline number.
Great answer. Thank you, Darlene.
Okay, you're welcome. And the last question is different soil needed for fruits and vegetables and flowers?
Well, all right, it's sort of a long answer. I'll tell you what I do. And I tend to recycle a lot of my soil. In my particular neighborhood, and depending on where you live in Southern California, you can have the best soil in the world, or you can have pure dirt without any richness to it. I'm in kind of mediocre soil myself where I live in Fontana, California. It's very rocky, so I find myself having to supplement it. I would say your best bet is to start with good soil that you might need to purchase at the market or at the store, and add to it across time. The bottom line is you need good soil. Don't necessarily trust the soil in your yard if you're not very familiar with it as growing medium. Like I say, I know the soil where I live is okay, but for growing vegetables and fruit, I supplement it with the bags that you see at the store, and I'll buy a variety of them, and I'll buy chicken manure and cow manure and supplementing topsoil, and I just kind of mix it together, and time will tell me if it was a good combination. Now, the plants you see before you right here are in a mixture that I make at home. In fact, I was noticing in this pot here, I'd brought a worm along with me. and the one rule of thumb I love related to your question is that if ever there's a worm in your soil, you have excellent soil. Worms only live in really good soil, and they only make the soil better by living in it. So look for wormy soil. Truth be told, I've done quite a deep dive into my gardening, and I do my own compost. I've got a compost big about this big by this big, and it's full of, all my kitchen waste goes in it. And so I will make a lot of my own good soil. So to the person asking about soil for gardening, spend a few dollars at the store to get a nice bag of garden soil if it's going to go into a garden soil, or potting soil if it's going to go into a pot. Do not confuse the two. It's an important distinction. Growing plants in the ground needs different composition, and it's called ground soil or soil, garden soil. If, however, you're like me and you do a lot of stuff in pots, it has to have a lot of additional stuff to do with moisture. So that's another bit of advice. Make sure that the bag says potting soil or potting amendment versus garden soil, depending if you're going to grow your stuff in pots or in the ground. Other than that, one day get to composting. Most people who get into that get a big kick out of that, growing their own worm farm practically. And good garden soil will make all the difference in the world. Just water it an awful lot here in Southern California.
Great. Thank you for all of your questions. We are going to take a quick 5-minute break. This is a great chance to get up, stretch, walk around, grab some water, and then meet us back here for our next presentation. See you soon. Welcome back. Our next activity is about gardening, and have you ever been to the nursery in your own community? We had the opportunity to visit Cherry Valley Nursery in Beaumont. So let's take a look at that.
Welcome. Today's gardening demonstration is brought to you by Cherry Valley Nursery and Landscape Supply, located in the city of Beaumont. Gardening is an activity with great health benefits, from getting sun exposure, a bit of exercise, and even improving your sleep. Gardening is the ultimate sensory activity and a fun way to engage with your loved one. It helps promote and stimulate touch, smell, and sight senses and keeps your brain healthy and active. Let's start today's activity with the supplies needed. Check in your self-care box for an important supply. You'll also need soil and water, which is not in your self-care box, but we did include a packet of seeds. Feel free to use it, or if you choose to use your own material, that works too. We suggest starting off with seed starter soil, as it's less dense and can help the seed grow as needed. Eventually, you can move to planter soil as the plant or vegetable grows stronger. The seeds you choose are limitless. For this demonstration, we are using sunflower seeds. And on the back of every package, you'll find personal care instructions for that type of flower or plant. Lastly, you'll also need a container. Or, if preferred, you can go straight to your garden and use the soil in your backyard. Let's get to planting. First, add your soil to each compartment of your container. You want to evenly add the soil to the top. Then, add a seed to each compartment. For the sunflower seed, it is suggested to place the seed a ½ inch deep and cover with more soil. So we just push down and cover evenly, as you see here. Do you have your gardening gloves? We did provide some if you need them. If you feel more comfortable with using your bare hands, feel free. Now let's add some water. The trick here is to be as even with the distribution of water as possible. We want to make sure the soil is fully wet without overflowing. And that's it. The planting can be done with seeds for vegetables, herbs, plants, flowers, and more. Remember to allow your plant to get plenty of sunshine, regular watering, and care. Just like we care for our loved ones, this is a reminder that we can also take care of ourselves and help blossom our own mental health.
That was a great gardening demonstration. Thank you, Cherry Valley Nursery, for their time and information. You can learn more about their nursery at the website below. And as they mentioned in the video, there are gloves in the self-care box for you to use when planting the garden, your garden. If you decide to use your bare hands, we also provided some nail kit supplies to take care of yourself and clean up after your gardening. Just a reminder, if at any time during the event today you need a break, feel free to step away. The event is being recorded and you'll be able to rewatch it in the future. Now let's turn to our last presentation for today, meditation. We know that caring for your loved one can cause stress, and we hope this meditation exercise can bring you some peace and calm.
Hi everyone, once again, thank you for coming to our virtual webinar, Blossom Your Mental Health. We're gonna go ahead and transition to our guided meditation that is guided by myself, Krystal Perez. I am the Education and Outreach Supervisor here for Inland Caregiver Resource Center. And so we're gonna do a relaxation exercise at this moment. So let's go ahead and get started. Go ahead and find, I know we're all at home, so go ahead and find a comfortable spot. Either that's a chair, your couch, your bed, anything where you feel comfortable. If you do want to lay down, go ahead. I'm going to be doing the meditation in a chair, so I'm going to be seated. I do ask that you have both of your feet on the floor. Your hands are going to be on top of your thighs, or just on the side, just hanging on your side. If you do have lights on, try to make yourself as comfortable as possible. If you want to turn off the lights or dim the lights. If you're laying down, also the same. If you want to dim the lights or turn off the lights. For the purpose of this video, I'm going to leave all my lights on so you can see me. And again, if you want to lay down, close your eyes. If you do want to close your eyes while you're seated, feel free to do that. So let's go ahead and get started. Again, make yourself as comfortable as possible. I'd like you to remove any objects from your lap and place your feet on the floor. You're gonna place your hands, like I said, on your thighs. And then if you do have your legs or your arms crossed, I do ask that you uncross them at this time. And then again, if you can close your eyes so that you're not distracted by anything that's going on around you. Now, I want you to breathe deeply and imagine that your stomach is an empty vase that you have to fill up to the rim with air. Inhale deeply again and exhale. While you're exhaling, say to yourself a word like amen or calm silently to yourself. Continue breathing as deeply as possible, always filling up the bottom of your stomach and then exhaling. Right now, notice where your body is most tense. Make yourself as comfortable as possible. Begin by relaxing the tension in your neck, your shoulders, your arms, your back, down your legs, and finally your feet. Keep breathing deeply and exhale, saying to yourself that word that you have chosen. Now, imagine that you're searching for the most safe and peaceful place that you know. Where are you? Are you indoors or are you outdoors? When you find your special place, look at it closely. What is it like? Use all your senses to enjoy it as much as possible. Look around you. What colors can you see? What smells do you notice? And what sounds do you hear? Can you hear the chirping of the birds? Or are you on the beach and you can hear the calls of the seagull and the crashing of the waves? Or maybe what you're listening to is the peaceful sound of a river's current. Can you make out the breeze that's running through the branches of the trees? Or perhaps you're listening to silence on a mountain peak. Pay attention to the colors. Is it bright outside or is it dark? The sounds, are they loud or are they soft? What sensations do you feel right now? Is it warm or do you feel cold? Do you like being in this spot alone? Look closely at your place, enjoy it, you're at peace. Now enjoy for a few moments the experience of being in your peaceful place. soon, I'm going to ask you to come back from your peaceful place, knowing that you can always go back just by closing your eyes and deeply breathing 3 times. Slowly leave your peaceful place and focus all your attention on your breathing again. Little by little, you will leave your place and let yourself know that you can always return to this place just by closing your eyes and deeply breathing 3 times. I'm going to count from 5 to 1, and when I reach 1, I'll ask you to come back and open your eyes. So 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, so that was an easy, simple, it's just a 5-minute quick relaxation guided meditation. If you do have any questions or if you want more resources on additional meditations, there's always YouTube. If you do want, we do have some more resources here at the office. Go ahead and give us a call. Our office number is 1-800-675-6694. To end our session or relaxation exercise, everyone should have in their self-care box some of this liquid IV. Please remember to stay hydrated. You just put your liquid IV in a cup. It's 16 ounces. It's one of these per 16 ounces of water. So you can put it in a water bottle. Just remember to stay hydrated and go ahead and, drink your hydration. If you don't like it, you can just drink regular water as well. But everyone, thank you so much.
Thanks, Krystal. What a great way to decompress. Make sure you stay hydrated, everyone, especially as it starts to warm up this summer. We're so grateful for you joining us today for Blossom Your Mental Health at ICRC. Our mission is to help families and communities cope with and manage the challenges of caregiving. We offer classes, training, support groups, counseling, all designed for you, the family caregiver. If we can support you in any way, please call our office at 800-675-6694. We look forward to seeing you at our next event. Thank you and have a great evening, everybody. Bye.